Good evening and welcome to INQ and A. The Inquirer question and answer program comes to you every Tuesday. We sit down with a leading newsmaker every week to discuss the issues of the day. And tonight, we are going to sit down with a renowned political analyst to discuss the news that so many newsmakers have made in the last few days. We are, of course, you are listening to us on Radyo Inquirer 990. You are following us on Facebook Live. You are also following us on the different Inquirer social media platforms, on Viber, on Twitter, on Fire Chat, on Line, and on Kakao. We are also on Inquirer 990 digital television, on Beam TV, and of course we are covered by the Philippine Daily Inquirer and by Inquirer.net. My name is John Neri. I'm editor-in-chief of Inquirer.net, and with me is my co-host, the chief of reporters of Inquirer.net, Christine Zabilio.
Thank you, John, and good evening to everyone watching us tonight. Before we give the floor to our guest, here are 3 things about him. So let's get to it. The first one, he has been at the forefront of the electoral reform movement, co-chairing the Go NGO summits from 2002 to 2015. He was a graduate of the Philippine Science High School and the University of the Philippines. And he is a participant of the Federalism Study Committee of PDP Laban Federalism Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, the Executive Director of the Institute for Political and Electoral Reform, or IPER, Ramon Casiple. Welcome, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, Mon. We're very happy to have you on board. Alam mo naman, talagang pagdating sa political analysis, Ramon Casiple's name is right at the top. Thank you for making time for us.
Well, nagkataon lang yan kasi pag nagkakagulo yung mga politiko, usually I'm asked ba't nagkakagulo. hindi ko naman profession yung political analysis eh. It's a byproduct ng aming involvement sa political reforms.
That's true. In fact, the last time I saw Mon, we were in a Senate hearing yung sa Electoral Reform Committee. Si Mon is plugged in into the the workings of the government, no? He's a frequent resource person, and dami niyang contacts. He's involved in so many. That's why he has a much more comprehensive view of what's happening. So, punta na tayo dun sa tanong. Bakit ba nagkakagulo? Let's start with the Senate. What's happening in the Senate, Mon?
Well, there's a larger context,
Mm-hmm.
You have to start with the presidency ni President Duterte.
Mm-hmm.
He came by way of the elections in a landslide.
Mm-hmm.
And
16 million votes.
The administration of President Aquino basically was surprised by the victory, the scale of the victory. And the reason why I think he won was that mainly it's a protest vote by the people against the previous, not only against the administration of Benigno Aquino III, but even the whole post-Marcos period. In fact, we can say now that the people power period is basically over. And we are entering uncharted waters.
Okay. Magandang point yun, ano? So, parang the people power era has come to an end. Now we are in the age of digong. Let's bring that down to the dynamics in the Senate.
Yeah. If you understand within that framework, then you would know that the opposition or the past administration is the opposition. And there is a definite move to dismantle many of the initiatives, not only the last administration, but even the previous administrations. And the Senate, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know how you view it, is a major battleground at this time. And the opposition never had a modus vivendi with the administration of President Duterte.
Mhm.
And that's the reason why from the start of the administration last year up to now, and I think even in the near future, it's an open-ended type of a battle with no rules. And what is happening in the Senate today basically reflects that kind of a battle.
Mhm.
It's a no holds barred.
Okay. Balikan muna natin yung concept na modus vivendi, no? So a way of living, no? A way of dealing with each other. If I remember correctly, the first chairman of the Justice Committee in the 17th Congress was Laila de Lima. That couldn't have been to the satisfaction of President Duterte.
I think so. And
So kasama yan dun sa ano, yung ibig sabihin na
kasama yan.
wala talaga silang arrangement. Parang
Wala silang rules eh.
Walang-
Kasi usually modus vivendi is not really a
Mhm.
explicit rules.
Mhm.
It's a way to behave towards each other.
Mhm.
Sa ganun, walang sorpresahan, walang
Mhm.
walang mga backstabbing, etc.
Mhm. Parang rules of
In-
engagement.
Mm.
Oh, parang in a civilized society, meron kayong mga boundaries, so-called. Ito wala. Kaya from the start, yung behavior ng mga nasa administrasyon towards
Mhm.
Laila de Lima ay talagang kumbaga parang labanan sa kalye ito eh.
Mhm.
Anong mapulot mo, tapon mo. Ganun yung ano dyan.
So you're not surprised now with, Secretary Aguirre, Soljan Calida, the way they speak and the way they,
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
they're very antagonistic when it comes to the opponents of President Duterte.
Remember from day one, I think even before day one,
Mhm.
there was already the public statements coming from the president
Mhm.
that there are plots against him.
Mhm.
And I think one of the reasons why he did not attend his own proclamation was that he's not really sure of his security here in Manila.
Mhm.
That's also the reason why he is staying in Davao. And that kind of thinking,
Mhm.
I think, afflicted all of his people. They are saying ghosts where there are really ghosts.
Mm.
Dun sa Senado po, sino kaya can you point to specific senators who might form the core of the Duterte bloc? Because even if there's a super majority now, 16, 17 votes, they're not all uniformly loyal to Malacanang.
But the problem, of course, is our political party system.
Mhm.
You have the PDP Laban, for example, as the
Mhm.
ruling party, but
Mhm.
there's only one senator
Mhm.
from the PDP Laban.
That's right.
And President Duterte was not even a long time member of PDP Laban.
That's right.
It only adopted him
Mhm.
for the campaign.
Mhm.
So there's nobody actually who we can say that inherent loyal
Mhm.
to the president, because his own people were not part of the Senate.
Mhm.
What we have is a coalition led by PDP Laban, because
Mhm.
that's the ruling party, created on the basis of alignments with the president.
Mhm.
Well, since the rule in the Senate is that majority and minority
Mhm.
are decided by voting for
By
the Senate
voting.
president,
Mhm.
Liberal Party people, whom the others perceive as the opposition now,
Mhm.
actually voted for Coco Pimentel.
Mhm.
And so they became part of the majority. So I tend to view what happened
Mhm.
with the removal
Mhm.
of some of them
Mhm.
from chairmanship of
Mhm.
committees as a way basically to realign this majority-minority within the Senate.
Mhm.
Meaning, the issue that is being raised against them,
Mhm.
their positions which are supposedly does not accord with the position of the president,
Mhm.
I think is merely a cover for
Mhm.
the realignment. The the move will put basically these four senators
Mhm.
squarely in the minority,
Mhm.
and they accepted that. But one practical result is that if there is a new vote for
Mhm.
Senate presidency,
Mhm.
that may be only that a temporary thing. Meaning they can still vote later, become part of the majority again.
Okay. So, um, balikan natin yung point na traditionally, yung majority-minority is based on your vote for Senate President. Ang sinasabi mo ngayon is, if I understand you correctly, yung realignment is really now, instead of majority-minority, it's really more of administration-opposition.
Position.
Parang mas klaro yung
Well,
lines.
sa view nila, no?
Mhm.
Pero ang rules ng Senate kasi hindi yun eh.
Mhm.
It doesn't say na kailangan may opposition, may administration.
That's right.
That is usually decided in other countries dahil may political party involved.
Mhm.
The party
Ito.
of
Mhm.
the administration, the party of the opposition.
Mhm.
Sa Senate natin, for that matter, the whole Congress,
Mhm.
walang ganun. And you align with the President or you go against the President.
Mhm.
But the rules itself of the two houses says that who vote for the Senate President and the Speaker will decide who is the majority and minority.
But you were not surprised that there was a realignment. It was just a matter of time.
I think so. Kasi
What was
remember,
the...
there was a fierce contest
Mhm.
between Senator Coco Pimentel and Senator Cayetano
Mhm.
during that last year.
That's right, yeah. In July. Mhm.
And I think the ones who are moving against these four,
Mhm.
or for that matter, the whole LP,
Mhm.
are the same group that went against Coco Pimentel.
Mhm.
So there is that suspicion that this is not the end of it.
Okay, does Senate President Coco Pimentel know that, do you think?
I think he knows that. He has
So
his
there-
own strategy,
Mhm.
and that's why I said that this four may come
Mhm.
back and become part of the majority again.
Again. Mhm.
Because the reality is, it's a question of votes.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter who votes for you,
Mhm.
as long as you get the majority vote.
Sir, what
Go ahead.
what do you mean by it? This is not the end yet. What do you think should be expected now? Are they plotting against the Senate President, or they're trying to gain more influence in the Senate?
Well, yes, I tend to agree that it's not a question of administration and opposition.
Mhm.
Because if you know the whole culture of the Senate, its whole history, is that it's composed of 24 republics.
Mhm.
Even if they are aligned as a party, doesn't mean that in any voting, particularly if there's a power question involved,
Mhm.
it's one for himself. Meaning, what goes behind the public announcement, the public postures, are actually maneuvers to get the majority vote. If there is a question of contesting the Senate presidency. And my own feeling in this matter is that the question of who is the Senate presidency has not been resolved.
That's very interesting. So, parang first step lang yun. The removal of Senator Drilon as Senate President pro tempore and removing one committee each from 3 Liberal Party senators and Akbayan Senator Risa Ontiveros is just the first step. It's
Yeah,
possible that the Senate presidency is next.
that's why it's interesting that they were removed from chairmanship of only one committee each.
Mhm.
Remember, they have their own other committees,
Mhm.
and they retain these committees.
Mhm.
So if you're talking administration and opposition,
Mhm.
the logical thing to do is get them out of all
Yes.
committees.
Mhm.
If you're not part of the majority, you shouldn't be able to chair.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But
Well,
since you only
No, it's-
got one, you leave the possibility open that in future particular struggle for
Mhm.
presidency, you can still negotiate with this four.
It's interesting.
So what has happened is that so we it seems like it was, it was just a matter of time. But what has happened is that the minority of 3 before is now a minority of 6. So now there are 6 official members. Of course, only Trillanes is a member of both.
Yeah, it's also interesting that what escaped most people is that there were those from the minority who were given chairmanship
Yes.
of position. So it's not exactly the minority or the majority taking all the positions. Meaning, if the logic is it's a split within the majority, because the 4 of them are part of that, then there's no logic in taking somebody from minority, making him the chair, unless there's a quid pro quo.
Who would be the replacement for Coco Pimentel if ever there was a struggle? Would it be Alan Cayetano or maybe somebody else like Dick Gordon?
Well, that's a possibility. But if what Senator Cayetano is trying to do in the past months, he's taking on the suggestion from the president to either get the DOJ position or the Foreign
DFA.
Affairs. And actually, he's been with the president in most, if not all
Of
the
his,
trips.
yeah, that's right.
So there is that interest there. If he pursue that, then the loud whisper in the Senate is Senator Dick Gordon,
No.
and he's part of that group before.
From the start, that's
From the
right.
start.
Yes, that's right. Although again, Dick Gordon voted for Senate President Pimentel. It was only Alan Cayetano who did not show up. Who was not at the vote on the first day of the session. Siguro pwede natin balikan yung Senado, no? In a while, but punta naman tayo sa the other house, no? Sa Batasan. So you have a very powerful speaker, also with a super majority. Pero ngayon, parang he is taking his speakership on the death penalty bill. Ano pong basa ninyo dun sa Congress?
Well, my own take there is there may be 2 motives there involved. One is basically trying to be on the right side of the president, because the initiative for death penalty is from the president. The other aspect there is there may be a question of maybe insecurity. Because remember, just like in the Senate, the PDP Laban members of the House are only 3. In a big group of more than 290 representatives, you only have 3 original. Of course, they also have a lot of new members, most of them coming from the Liberal Party.
Right, yeah.
But everybody knows that it's not really a party move. So the key question actually is there a similar trend in the House of power plays and so on? And I think there is, because in the first place, he's the one actually who said that there are those who are interested in his position. And there's no truth to the rumor that he is leaving the position. So it's what you call, well, there's smoke, there's fire.
So
And,
siya mismo, he recognizes that there is a threat.
yes, and there are also news from other congressmen that there really is a move. Well, some of the stories says that, oh, that's a long time ago. The other says, no, it's still there. But the point is, he is sitting in a insecure chair.
Sitting in an insecure chair. What are the sources of insecurity? Would it be GMA? Would it be Sonny Belmonte? Would it be Rudy Fariñas? Where is it coming from?
Well, all of these 3 are veterans
Formidable,
of,
yeah.
maneuvers. They wouldn't admit publicly.
Of course, yeah.
But if we go by the traditional, the rules of traditional politics, if they think they have the chance, they have the numbers, they will go for it. There's no such thing as loyalty to the speaker and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they voted for him last year, doesn't mean they will still be there this year. So the key question there is, does Speaker Alvarez still have the support of the majority?
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's banking on the death penalty issue to ensure that the president will back him up, and it's a given right now in the House that what the president wants, he will get it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not just this House. I think from our history, it's clear that the House really follows the president, whoever the president is. They always find a way to be part of the administration coalition. Let's talk about a very interesting dynamic between GMA, Deputy Speaker, and Speaker Alvarez. Now, GMA has not changed her mind. She's against the death penalty. And Speaker Alvarez said, well, if she doesn't vote for it, we will remove her position as Deputy Speaker. How do you think this will play out?
Well, if we take the let's assume.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Let's assume that the two of them are really interested in the position.
Mm-hmm.
One to keep it, other to silence it. In this framework, death penalty becomes a key political capital. Because, of course, everybody knows that under her watch, GMA was the one who initiated the abolition of death penalty and the signing of the second protocol of the Covenant on Civil Political Rights. Meaning it put the whole Philippine government actually in an awkward position. But we have a president today who doesn't care. He wants it to be reinstated. So, if you go with the logic that the president's voice is the strongest voice actually in the lower house, then you need to be on his good side. So, from my own point of view, the positioning of Speaker Alvarez is logical. Because that's one area where Deputy Speaker GMA cannot go. She cannot turn back on what she thinks is her legacy. That's part of her legacy.
Well, it's possible also that even if she loses, she can still come out a potential winner if the margin of loss is very, very narrow. Nag-mobilize si GMA, natalo lang sila ng ilang puntos. The president is happy pumasa sa House, but GMA has demonstrated na may clout siya.
That's possible. In fact, I think what she's doing is a very cautious move. She has not come out yet openly that she will vote against the return of death penalty. What in fact she was saying up to now is that she may not vote out of delicadeza. So I think she's testing the waters here. If there really is a reaction, a bad reaction from the president, she may do it that way. But if she thinks that the president is open to the scenario that you think, or even the defeat of the bill, then she would go for it. But what is clear from my point of view is that there's already movement there, meaning just even more than the Senate maybe. It's more open there. Every congressman I talk to knows about it. That means there's a campaign among them, or there's an active discussion about it. But on the surface, nothing. Both of them are actually denying that there is such thing.
There are questions from Facebook, but before that, we could greet those who are watching from Iloilo City, Davao, Pangasinan, and from abroad we have someone from Mosul, Iraq, Chicago, London, South Korea, and Jeddah.
Pakibati naman sila, Mon.
So we have a lot of viewers.
Siyempre, marami akong kamag-anak, in fact, na OFW. And I greet, good morning, good afternoon, and good night to all of them.
So, the question from Facebook from JP Martinez was, Mr. Casiple, sa tingin niyo po ba ang nag-utos kay Pacquiao na ipatanggal ng mga LP senators sa kanilang posisyon sa Senate ay si Duterte? Ito po ay sadyang nasusulat sa Biblia. But I guess to add to that,
Sa Leviticus.
Yeah. or do you think the president's men are acting on their own will, or there is, a grand design, or really an order coming from Malacanang to shake things up?
Maybe in a general way, but I don't think there is a specific initiative from the president to do what actually were done.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather put it within the context of the internal dynamics of the Senate,
Of the Senate.
rather than anything that basically comes from Malacanang.
What was the prompt? I mean, we agree that it was only a matter of time before this realignment took place. What was the prompt that brought
I
us
think
here?
it's the Las Cañas case.
Las Cañas.
It's the one actually that worries, I think, Malacanang,
Mm-hmm.
because that may be a basis either for impeachment or any other political move later
Mhm.
on.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not yet at that point
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
where it becomes the issue. In a sense, the Las Cañas case is the opening of the door,
Okay.
and not all the actors yet are into that particular issue.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was seized by those that actually plotted against the four as a unifying issue. But more than that, I think it's more of the realignments within. And Senator Manny Pacquiao, it's an interesting role actually. He is a neophyte in the Senate, and the tradition actually in the Senate is that you should get your hands, wet by being the executor of any plan by your group. In this case, it's a majority caucus. In fact, it was done in his house.
That's right.
But
Parang
that doesn't mean he's the one who actually plotted
Yeah.
parang initiation lang, ano?
in a sense. I observed him in some hearings already. He doesn't have that kind of attitude or even aptitude to plot on his first term. Well, in fact, it's not even a year
Yes.
as a senator. And this reading the script, he literally he has this list of questions or positions. He reads it. That does not speak well of a plotter.
Okay. Teka, ang bilis ng oras.
We're
Let's
done
take
with the
a
first
break time.
Yes. So, let's take a 1-minute break. We'll be back after a minute. This is still IN Q&A with political analyst Mon Casiple.
mamamayang nagpupusisa. Radyo Inquirer 990. 990.
Welcome back to INQ&A. We have a very interesting discussion, analysis of the political situation with probably the country's foremost political analyst, who is a political analyst by accident, Ramon Casiple. Mon, balikan natin yung sa death penalty. Sa tingin mo, papasa siya sa House? Ano ang prospect sa Senate?
Sa House, hindi yan dictated by the issue itself eh. Sabi ko politika. And the tendency of the House is to approve anything that they think the President wants. Iba yung Senado. Senado kasi, isang mata mo nakatingin sa presidency. You're always the future president eh. So, tinitingnan mo yung impact sa public opinion, sa chances mo, popularity mo. Not only because the President wants it. Kaya, ang alam ko, kasi nakaupo ko doon sa hearing on that and death penalty, nahirapan.
Sa Senado?
Senado. And I think the lower house also. Kasi nandoon yung mga proponents before ng abolition ng death penalty like Deputy Speaker GMA. She considers that as her legacy. She cannot back out of it even if she wants to. At considerable number ng mga congressmen mga dati niyang mga tao.
Is there a
yun ang malaking sikreto diyan.
Is there a face-saving way for Speaker Alvarez to say hindi na natin muna itutuloy ito? Or kasado na siya?
Ako nandoon na sa conclusion na he already is in up to his neck. He cannot get out of it. Masyadong malalakas yung statements sa the last few weeks, yung mga threats niya na tanggalin sa deputy speakership yung even
GMA.
But it doesn't mean that he can come out with a formula that may not exactly shame the speaker or even the president. Madali yun kasi ganyang klaseng mga houses can really make any scenario they want. Ang Senado iba kasi mahirap kontrolin yung mga senators dahil may sarili silang objectives, sarili silang interest and so on.
Gusto ko lang before your question, Tan, gusto ko lang ulitin yung nabanggit mo kanina. Actually, I want to turn that into a formula. Ang ganda ng sinabi niya If you're in the House, one eye is on the President. If you're in the Senate, one eye is on the presidency.
That's true.
Maganda yun, Time?
We had Congressman Bagilat in our show. And he was saying na the stakes are high for the death penalty bill because this will pave the way for the other pet bills of the administration, yung lowering the age of criminal liability, federalism, cha-cha. Do you agree na if mapasa yung death penalty, it would be easy for the administration to get the other bills passed?
No, I don't agree. Parang isang chain yan. You have to start with the death penalty.
Wherein you get the loyalty na of
kasi iba-iba yung mga position din with regards to the other issues For example, yung feeling ko sa federalism, the opposition will come from Luzon sa Visayas legislators. Kasi walang ganong klaseng diskusyon sa kanila Pero kung tanungin mo yung Mindanao, and to a certain extent, some of the Visayas legislators, very passionate na yan. And precisely because the president made it his principal promise for change, mabigat yung pressure. Ang nafe-feel ko sa House mismo, even those who are skeptical of the concept, at the end of the day, sasabihin nila, gusto ng presidente ito we will vote for it. As long siguro na walang major objection na lumitaw, Ang death penalty iba Ang circumstances kasi niyan, natanggal na yan Ibabalik lang. So there's a lot at stake doon sa ganung klaseng action like JMA's position. Legacy niya yan. Alangan mabigla niyang tatalikuran yan. So, walang ganong klaseng stake sa federalism. For that matter, kahit yung lowering of age, walang treaty na violate pa dyan kasi wala naman tayong ganyang specific protocol na but death penalty has a second protocol of the ICCPR. Lumitaw yan sa Senado.
Oo nga eh.
Doon na hinto in fact ng hearing.
Kasi you would be violating an international treaty.
Yeah, can you explain that for our readers, for our listeners?
The second protocol of the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights states that the death penalty is abolished. And we have already ratified the ICCPR long before. It's one of the first UN treaty. But we did not specifically ratify the second protocol. It was GMA during her term who basically signed it. And the Senate at the time ratified it. So, tapos na yung proseso. Ang problem ito, there is a process for getting out of the ICCPR. There's no process for getting out of the protocol to. And it came out, in fact, in the hearing na kung gusto mong umatras sa death penalty, yung commitment na yon, kailangan umatras ka sa whole ICCPR. Parang sinabi mo, umalis na tayo sa UN. Covenant yan one of the fundamental documents ng UN yan. Kaya napaka-awkward nung sitwasyon.
The president has before said, disparaging things about the UN. But do you think leaving the UN is a real option for the Philippines?
I don't think so. Maraming implications yan. One, malaking possibility baka tingnan tayo as a rogue state. Lalo pa kung may mga killings na inaccuse tayo. Pangalawa, marami tayong involvement na sa UN. Not only UN as UN. Yung treaties. We have a whole series of treaties on human rights. Itong mga on peace. Ang dami yan
Yung climate change.
Ang tanong dyan atrasan mo ba yon? Kasi most of these treaties are being monitored and basically agreed upon within the processes of the UN.
Tan, you have questions, more questions from...
And actually, may question pero nasagot na natin kanina. Yung sa pagkakasibak ng mga LP senators sa Senate. We already discussed that.
Yung sa executive naman, you spend a lot of time dealing with the legislative branch, but you also
of course kasama yan.
Kasama din sana, di ba? You meet the executive. Anong reading mo sa are there factions within the executive, or they're all working as one, or?
Well, faction is too strong a word.
Okay.
But you can be sure there are groups, separate groups around the president. And they have their own interests. They have their own, let's say, people who they want to be appointed to certain positions. They have their own projects and so on. And the cabinet, of course, is a reflection of that. And what binds them together, basically, is the president. Meaning, they work with the president, they coordinate with the president, they support his program because it coincides with theirs. But the problem there is, or the question there is, does it coincide with those of the other groups? For example, if you think mining, there is a very strong and very sharp exchanges of words between Secretary Dominguez and Secretary Lopez. Precisely because they represent the opposite poles with regards to how to handle the mining industry.
How will that be resolved? Will it be up to the president?
Well, you can say that at the end of the day, it's the president. But then the attitude of the president is that I appointed you to that. I expect you to do what we agreed upon. The problem is he agreed with Secretary Lopez on her advocacy, even including stopping mining itself, because he did it in an ordinance in Davao City. But then he also said, as a general frame, that he wants the economic growth to go on. And that's the marching order to Secretary Dominguez. So the economic managers, led by Secretary Dominguez, wants this ban on mining to be lifted, or at least only a small portion would be affected. And Secretary Lopez, of course, is adamant because it already entered into a process of evaluation, and auditing, and so on. Meaning she has the documents there. But what came out was a compromise. The multi-sectoral review.
Yeah.
And both of them agreed. So that's the intervention of the cabinet as a whole, and also by the president. The question, of course, at the end of the day, who will prevail?
Yes.
That I cannot answer at this time, precisely because the president himself has not said anything.
Sir, let's go to the president. Right after the elections, I read your article from the World Post. You called President Duterte then the Donald Trump of the Philippines. That was how he was being referred to by the international media. Has your outlook on the president changed since then? And do you think he has mellowed in some of his beliefs? For example, he has a very strong stance on some things, but there have been instances recently when he backtracked, for example, the climate change issue.
Well, let's start with a small correction. The title of that particular article that you read is theirs, not mine.
Okay.
I have not.
It was their editorial
If at all,
judgment.
I would rather say that Trump is the Duterte of the U.S. He was elected first.
Yeah.
And even Trump himself referred to some of the positions that President Duterte had.
Yes.
But then the other question is that was there a mellowing? I think you have to start with where the president is coming from. One of the significant things he said during his inauguration was, "I want to be the mayor of the Philippines." That's already a giveaway. He doesn't want to change his ways. He will concentrate on things that he thinks he knows. He'll give the other part of the president's concern to his cabinet. Well, taking off from that, I think he was surprised at the reaction to the anti-drug campaign. But it was so, in a sense, violent reaction from all sectors. But he is like a mayor. He thinks it's his own town, and he wants to pursue it. And there are some other reasons, personal and maybe historical, that basically brought him to that stubborn position. But he is also known as somebody, in this what sets him apart from other presidents. He can change his mind. Meaning, if there is really big reaction, he changes. In fact, he takes back some of his statements before on some other issues. So, if you think that's mellowing, I would say yes. But then, if you're talking, is he changing his mind? Actually, it's the whole point of assessing him. When he says something, that doesn't mean that it's his position or final position. He himself says that. If he does something, then you can reliably base your whatever conclusions you had on his position. In that sense, I think Trump and him are in the same boat. You don't know what really are they thinking and their own final position. I think it's the part of President Duterte. People close to him says that actually it's part of his strategy. He doesn't want to be put in a box. And in fact, he doesn't think in a box. You cannot call him an ideologue in the sense that he has this logical system of ideas and so on. He is very much, I think, a pragmatic personality, and would agree with you on specific ideas, which does not necessarily conform to your other ideas.
I think the militant left right now
Yes.
is coming to terms with
Would
that.
agree with that, yeah. I was thinking about that as well.
Yeah, that he's more the pragmatic one rather than
He
the
called himself a
ideological one.
leftist president, but
A socialist president.
but-
yeah.
when it comes to it,
I don't know if he even understand the whole term. When you say socialist, there's a whole host of meanings there. The same as federalism.
I have a question about the president. Do you think that there is a plot against him to oust him? I mean, this connects us back to part of the context dun sa dynamics in the Senate, the dynamics in the Congress, even the work of people like Cabinet Secretary Jun Evasco. Is there a plot?
Let's take it one by one.
Okay.
If you're talking people, are there people who are opposed to him thinking of a plot? I think the answer to that is yes. But it's a normal part of a presidency in this in our context. If you're asking, is there a plot in the works or actually being carried out right now? I don't think so. I think the level, whatever process there is still on getting his popularity down to a certain level where a plot may be undertaken. Meaning it's, if you think destabilization, that would be in the propaganda level at the most. That's why they are very sensitive to criticisms. And this is not a certification of a particular thinking of the opposition. The opposition is a broad one, depending on the issue. But if you're referring to the political opposition, meaning on the basis of power, then I would say that they don't have the capability at this time, and they are not prepared to do it at this time. It's more a wish than
Than a plan.
Probability or something. But the but there is, if there is a change in the situation, not only domestically but even internationally, and it favors the removal of the president before his term, I don't think the opposition will take a second look at it. They'll do it. Because, as I've said before in my first statement, there's no modus vivendi. This is one administration, one government that doesn't have rules of engagement with the opposition.
Is it too late for the administration and the political opposition to come to terms on rules of engagement?
I think so. It's not late. It's not. I mean,
It's not
it
late.
it can come in at any time. But to be able to go to that level, the question here first is that, is there respect for each other? I don't think there is, unfortunately. And every time somebody speaks on both sides, even if you're polite about it, but the content of what you're saying is basically antagonistic to the ideas of the other side. In that situation, trust is not even a factor.
we have a question from Facebook, someone watching from Maicoan City. But first, let's greet our other viewers from Baguio. And from abroad, we have people from Bahrain, Sydney, Australia, and Thailand. So good evening to those watching us tonight.
Batiin
Good
niyo
evening.
naman.
Ito ba yung mga foreigners o
No, puro
Pilipino?
mga kababayan nating
kababayan
OFW.
Most of them are.
Kumusta po
yeah.
kayo? Alam namin, ako alam ko 85% sa inyo bumoto kay Digong. That's one of the hallmarks ng kanyang victory.
That's right.
So the question from Facebook from Rod Veloza, how about the military? Solid support ba talaga sila kay Digong?
Actually, that's the good question because any plot will have to involve the military. In fact, if you want to monitor if there is a plot or not, don't monitor anybody else or any institution. It's the military. So the answer to that question is yes, there are, I think, attempts, there are efforts to get the military to be partisan against the president. And that's one reason why the president is also making sure that the military is either neutral or loyal to him by going around
The
among the
camps.
camps. Although it's normal, it's not really out of character of a new president. Every new president goes around camps because that's the first thing he knows that can unravel his own government. At this point in time, I think the military is basically on the sidelines. I'm
which,
not
which,
saying,
which I think is a good thing.
which is a good thing actually.
We don't want them out of their barracks.
But they're also, I think, keenly observing the whole situation.
That's right.
Meaning it's not a passive military here. You have a military that's basically watching what is happening, but they don't have that decision to intervene in whatever manner.
Oh, very interesting. Pero ang bilis ng...
Yeah. But I have one more question from Facebook that's
okay.
quite
and then
interesting.
we have the game, huh?
Yeah, we will have the game. Just quickly, sir, from Catherine Manalo Legaspi, do you think the president will declare martial law soon?
I don't think so. And I'm fairly confident in saying that. To declare martial law, there are so many factors that you have to prepare. You need the full loyalty of the military. You need to have full control of the key institutions like Supreme Court or Congress. Malayo. It would take years to prepare. You cannot do it in just a month. Lalo pa wala ka namang lista sa active officers.
That's true.
Okay. We have 4 minutes left.
Yes.
We have what we call, sir, we briefed you already before the show. We call it the good, the bad, and the maybe. We will be giving you 10 issues or prevailing topics right now in Philippine politics and even abroad, and maybe entertainment. And you will just have to answer if it's a good idea or a bad idea. You can answer maybe, but only once. It's going to be your safe answer. So let's start. The first one, Secretary Yasay saying he was never an American citizen.
That's bad.
Pacquiao's decision to postpone his earlier announced retirement. He's going to fight in April.
That's good.
Okay. Secretary Aguirre asking the public who they want to be jailed next. He did it during
That's
the...
very bad.
Oh, I think that's the first time we had very bad.
That's right.
Number 4, I don't know, sir, if you watch this. La La Land losing to Moonlight as Best Picture at Oscars.
That's bad.
That's bad. Oh, you like La La
I
Land?
voted for La La Land.
Oh, okay.
He's a
That's
romantic.
interesting. The 5th one, maintaining the no ransom policy of the government given the beheading
That's
of the...
good.
Okay. Government conducting review of closure and suspension of mines.
That's very good.
Okay. Transport strike to oppose jeepney phase out or the DOTR modernization program.
I think that's a qualified good.
Human rights groups holding President Duterte accountable and liable for the extrajudicial killings.
That's a maybe.
Okay. Last one. PDEA chief just this morning claiming it's possible for the Philippines to be drug-free.
I think it's bad.
It's too big of a promise.
Yeah, it's whatever they're doing now. I don't think will solve the problem.
We have
Oh,
3 minutes.
Yeah,
Well,
that's right.
just 2 minutes left. Do you want to?
Let's talk about that.
Explain, yeah.
The drugs problem.
Oh, sorry. I
So-
forgot one. I had one more item. I forgot.
Okay.
Last one is the administration's tax reform bill.
It's bad.
Oh, really? Oh, we had...
We had a lot of bad answers today. Maybe, sir, you can explain some of them.
Well, if you're talking tax, I'm for a progressive taxation. And the present proposals on the table, particularly relying on increasing the VAT, makes for a
regressive.
regressive tax policy. I don't think it will work for the poor. It is anti-poor because the one who basically buys all these goods that will be taxed, including diesel, fuel, are the poor. The rich can actually adjust. They have the money. The poor doesn't have the luxury of adjusting their expenditures.
And maybe last 30 seconds, why do you think the administration's war on drugs won't work?
Well, for one, the nature of the problem. It's not a criminal problem. They are going after the effects of the drug. They're not going after the drugs itself. Meaning, the context why there is a drug problem in the first place. Everybody actually agrees. It's a health problem, it's a social problem. What is lacking in the whole anti-drug campaign today is that the bigger context. They don't, other than rehabilitation, of course, which I don't think is enough. They don't have. They should address the poverty. They should address the lack of opportunities for jobs and so on of those that are involved in drugs.
Thank you. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Tayin, magpaalam na tayo.
It's exactly 9 p.m. Thank you to everyone who watches tonight. If you didn't catch the first part of our interview, just go to the Inquirer.net Facebook page to watch the whole video of our interview tonight. Who's next on the hot seat? Follow us on social media on Twitter, _newsstand and Ksabilio INQ.
We'd like to thank all of you who have followed us tonight. It's been a very interesting discussion, and above all, I'd like to thank our special guest, eminent political analyst Mon Casiple. This has been INQ&A. Thank you and good night.